everybody. Welcome back to the frequently asked questions section to Mirror World Publishing. Again, my name is Adam, and this is Justine Alley Dowsett. She is the publisher and the owner of Mirror World Publishing. So we were sent a bunch of questions by you over in Michael Fox's class, Western University. We have a bunch of questions over here. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention over here to the questions. You're going to be answering them. I'll chime in once in a while, but it's all you. No, I'll throw my 2 cents in. All right, so question number 1. Do you prefer potential clients to be familiar with some of the works published under your company prior to presenting a manuscript?
Yes.
Next question.
100% yes. It's very important, no matter who you're submitting to do your research. We kind of mentioned that in the first half. But specifically for us, because we're a small press, we have a very... not narrow, but a very specific niche. And we want to make sure that your book is going to fit amongst those books. And that's something that we definitely consider when reviewing the submissions, is how well does this fit with Mirror World's mission statement and with the other books that are there. So familiarizing yourself with our list is only going to help your chances to know if your book belongs with Mirror World.
Exactly. And I would, no matter who you're submitting to, I would always look at their catalog first.
Yeah.
Look and see what genres they have primarily.
Yeah, even read some samples of the work just to see if the writing styles are even similar.
Or even better, read a book.
Yeah, read one of our books. I mean, if you're part of our community, we're more likely to know who you are. That's a step up. If you mention, some people say, oh, well, I heard about Mirror World through this Western University class that I took. That's us saying, oh, okay, I know where you're from now. And just it creates a connection in your mind. It's the same as when networking. You come up with those things that you have in common.
Exactly.
You're just going to stick in that person's head better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is, who, from your experience, do you believe are the primary audience for fantasy works in the current climate? Demographic, age, etc., etc.
Yeah. I think a lot of people read fantasy, but that's a tough question. They're all tough questions.
It is a tough question.
Okay, the biggest thing in the market right now is young adult. Because a decade or two ago, young adult didn't even really exist as its own genre. It was just part of, other genres, that sort of thing. Now we are so much more writing to teens. And not just teens. There are so many readers who now grew up with those teen books now who read them as adults. Yeah. So I would say young adult is like the biggest demographic and market. That being said, for Mirror World specifically, we try to have like an even spread so that when we're at a show or a market or even in our store, anybody of any age group or anything that you happen to like, there's something there for you. Right. So, yeah.
When it comes to just fantasy in general, and this comes, you'll see this in cycles throughout generic media, and it's probably Game of Thrones came out, and so fantasy became more mainstream, more in the public eye. A lot more people were like, "Oh, what's this?" and they were looking into it, and then they got into the books, and then so fantasy became much more commonplace.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's not as strange as I thought it was, because some people just won't come out of their comfort zone.
They hear about magic and dragons and swords, and then they're off. They're like, you know what? No, that's not a good story.
All stories are just essentially about people and how they live their lives.
Exactly. So, and you'll see this with cycles. Like, say, for example, maybe in a couple of years, we'll be back on the sci-fi trope. Yeah. So sci-fi, something big will come out, and there'll be sci-fi. Like a little while before this, it was Wizards with Harry Potter. Came out, and the world was crazy about wizard stuff and magic and everything.
It's true.
Time just kind of blends together. Yeah. So, next question. How polished do you prefer a manuscript to be when it is submitted to you?
So we're not looking for polish so much. That being said, it needs to be easily readable. I think that's the biggest thing, is to make it flow really well and not be awkward, because that's something you can smooth out with, a developmental editor or with a writer's group, or, if you just have a friend who wants to help you go over it. So I'm more looking for engagement and for potential. So engagement is when we're looking at the opening chapters and the opening scene and paragraph in particular. We want that, as we said earlier, to kind of draw you in. Now, potential has to do with the whole manuscript. Yeah. So if I get to the end of your sample, do I want to read more? After I've read the whole book, do I think that with a little bit of work and some polish, will this be something that will be really good?
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we're looking for mainly.
Yeah. You want to know, like, am I going to turn the page
Yeah.
to this? Yeah.
So we just ran in the summer an anthology contest. This is the first. We've never done short stories before. It's just not something that I have a lot of practice with. I've now written short stories, but in the past it wasn't. So we never did short stories, and now we've done a contest. And what we told the people who entered that contest was, we are not looking for perfect. We're not looking for a finished copy of a story. Mm-hmm. We expect you to write a draft now and send us the draft, because we just want to find things that have potential, and we want to scoop those up before anyone else can get them. Yeah. So that was what we were doing. And I think that goes for our general submissions too. Maybe a little more polished than that, but we're looking for something that has that potential we're looking for.
Excellent. How far do references from other authors, publishers, or etc. go within the decision-making process for selecting a manuscript?
I don't think it goes to the decision-making process so much, but I think it does make you pay more attention. So if I get a manuscript that I have specifically told someone to send me, so maybe I saw them on a show, or maybe they're on our Facebook page, and I had a conversation with that person, then the manuscript comes in, I remember that person, so you form that connection. So that doesn't mean I'm going to like their book any better.
Right.
But it is going to make me go, oh, okay, maybe I'm more interested now. Again, I'm going through so many submissions, so the ones that stand out, anything that gets you that little bit of notice is going to make a difference.
Exactly, yeah. So for example, if any of you guys know any of the other authors that are with Mirror World, and you put in your letters like, hey, I was advised by, I'm just going to throw a name out there. I was advised by, actually, I won't say a name because then they'll put it on their query letter. So, I'm not going to do that. to submit my book, XYZ. I just realized I gave them a hack to be able to get your attention.
Two points to that.
Make sure you actually know the person, please.
If you do actually know one of our authors and they think that your manuscript is good and they say, hey, you should submit to Mirror World, we accept those kind of submissions all year round. That's what we call a submission by invitation. So that's different than a general submission.
Right.
So that actually gets you kind of ahead of the line a little bit, because we're going to look at it when we're not like overwhelmed.
Right.
So there's that. The other point,
it doesn't hurt though to actually like know one of those other authors and to be able to.
The other point I was going to make is just that it's kind of like when you apply for a job. So if a friend is already working for the company and you put referred by so and so, it's going to do about the same amount for you going to a publishing house, I think.
Excellent. Yeah. So, do you take submissions from authors who have a history publishing, so magazines, literary journals, more seriously? Or do you simply take the submitted manuscript into consideration?
So there's a mix on that. It does factor in, but it's not that important. That being basically what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to look at the submission regardless. I'm going to read the sample, and the writing is going to stand on its own.
Yes.
However, when I'm reading the query letter, you can tell if somebody has experience submitting and listing your credentials, but not in detail, but just saying, I've been published in this many magazines, or I've got this many stories. That's just going to go in the back of my head.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's
like
a cover letter.
I've received this award from a short story that I published last year, and I've moved into this manuscript, and I think this does this like this. Not like, I've received the Notable Claim Award from 15 different companies, and I've submitted 300 times.
Don't focus on it. It's noteworthy, but it's not necessary. Especially for a smaller press, we don't actually, it can almost work against you if you're like, oh, well, I've been published by a big publishing house and I've won this award. Sometimes we think, oh, that person maybe is past kind of our press. Maybe they should be going for bigger fish. I mean, that doesn't normally enter my head, but it can, I guess.
If you have something that like you're proud of that you want to showcase, then put it in there.
Yeah, I mean, you're mostly just saying like, I am a writer. I've written other things. Yeah, and then that I just take that into consideration. That sort of thing.
What are some tips for authors when they are submitting to publishing companies to make their submissions stand out?
I think we've covered that question mostly. It's the little bit of networking that we talked about, and trying to have your voice come through, and your author voice is different depending on what genre you're writing. That sounds kind of weird, but let's say you're writing we talked about earlier, the person who wrote a comedic book,
Yes.
and then their query letter was a bit funny. So if you write like a serious dramatic romance, don't give me a funny query letter. It doesn't work.
No. Or like you write like a horror book and be like, "Hi guys, my name is Jim.
We want to see part of your personality, but we also want to prove that you can write a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to make or break it really, but it does help.
Yeah, it puts you it gives you a leg up. It gives you
we get a hint
chance
of your style through the way you write your query letter. So that's something you should keep in mind. Is if you can't write a query letter, if your query letter is riddled with errors, let's say, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, because if your query letter is riddled with errors, what's your manuscript going to look like?
So if your query letter is easily readable and flows really well and has like a hint of your personality and a hint of the genre you're writing, like the blurb or the description of your story has a hint of the genre you're writing in it, that's probably the best way to write that query letter. Yeah.
What is a good level of sales for a first-time author publishing with a small Canadian press like yours?
So that really varies, and that has to do with platform. That has to do with how much the author is putting into the effort of marketing. Sometimes it has to do with just time of year or year.
Genre, what other media has come out at the time?
Yeah, it's a grab bag, but the question specifically asks what's a good level. So, we've gone anywhere from, as long as I think in pre-order and the first month, maybe you do about like 50 books. That makes sense. And that's print. I'm not taking ebooks into consideration because ebooks kind of just sell whenever they sell.
And those are sold, not promotional copies.
Right. No, those are sold.
Given copies.
Yeah. So if you sell about 50, I would say that's decent. Now, we have had books that have sold much less than that, and we've had books that have sold much more than that. The best-selling book that we had was not even in our genre. It's just something we took on because we wanted to try something new. It was a coloring book.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just everything came together for it because we ended up getting on TV on a local channel. The book was set locally. It's a local coloring book about Windsor, where our publishing house is based. We were on TV. We got help with tourism Windsor. The author himself
had his own platform.
Had a platform. He was running like a sketch and cycle event where he would sell these books at. So he was ordering cases and cases and cases of them. We were selling cases and cases. They got put into gift shops. They got put into cycling stores. They got put into all the tourism locations, and they got the coverage from all the media outlets. So perfect storm. We sold thousands and thousands of copies. So that happens.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
But the opposite is also true. We've had fantastic series that we think are fantastic, but maybe they're just a bit odd, or they're kind of a unique.
People look at them and go,
It's just maybe something that you'd have to have a little more investment in, I guess.
It's like, am I like, and the common reader would say, am I willing to put down the time to invest in this book, or am I just going to do something else?
Yeah, or maybe they just haven't heard of that thing before.
Exactly.
So those books don't sell very well necessarily, but I'm going to pick them up anyway because we are a small press and we're developing like a niche. So it may not sell as much right away in the launch period because it's not marketable. Yeah. But people who know our stuff, who like what kind of things we have, are going to go and read all of our other stuff too sometimes. So it just,
and that's a good thing about this industry as well with books, which is different than film. Is film to a point, you only get money from X amount of time, and then the film itself is just watchable whenever. Books are evergreen.
Yes, they are.
They will always be sellable.
Yeah.
And it might be this climate now, maybe is not this good for this type of genre or this book, but in 3 years from now, something might come out and the commonality will shift, and everyone just grab bagging it, and they'll try to grab as much as they can from it, and you've already got it sitting there.
It's true.
You just do a simple re-promotional push and boom, you got it.
Another thing too is if you write a book series, sometimes the first book doesn't sell as well, but it'll pick up momentum, and sometimes the opposite is true, where you'll sell a bunch at first, but then it doesn't, the next one comes out and it's not marketed the same or whatever, and it just doesn't. So it's so hard to predict, which is what makes this business like next to impossible, but
how many times have you yourself sat down with a friend who's reading a book series and they're reading like the third in the series or whatever, and they're like, oh man, this book's awesome, this guy just did this and this and this and this, and you're like, and then you go back and look at the first one yourself.
Yeah, word of mouth is so valuable for us. Yeah, the more people, like, we consider Mirror World to be a community, so the more people we can engage and talk about things and get to talk about our books and share them with other people, that's how we really spread.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The next question here is, how hard is it to find an agent?
So in the first half, I kind of mentioned that publishing some people think of it as a lottery. It's very hard to get an agent.
I wouldn't call the agent part a lottery, though. I would call that
it's not a lottery. It's not a lottery, but it is. The statistics are unfortunately just as insane,
as low. Yeah.
So there's a problem right now in the publishing industry where we have a saturation of the market because of the age of digital publishing and print on demand and ebooks and self-publishing. All of those things have factored together. So there's just so many titles available, and like if you look at an Amazon sales rank for any book, it's like the number is ridiculous,
all over the place.
It's all in each genre, and it's still a huge number. So there's just so much content, and people don't have the attention spans necessarily to read maybe as much as they used to, or they're busy or whatever. So the factors are kind of against you, I guess, in that way. And agents are going to gatekeep and filter and try to find what books they particularly want to grab. And then from there, the publisher is going to filter out what books they even want from the agent. So your chances of going through that whole system are very, unfortunately, slim, which is why self-publishing is such an attractive offer to people. But I encourage people not to forget about the small presses, because there are, a lot of them, and they're very specified in their niches, and they can help you get to market for that particular niche. And you're not going to get, you're going to get a more personal experience and more personal treatment. And your book is going to get somebody who actually cares and wants to back it, as opposed to just a big faceless company necessarily.
Right, exactly.
Unless you are their number one bestseller that season, you might not get any marketing at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, a way to find an agent would be to look at books in your basic niche, your basic genre, and find who put those out, and then backtrack it, and then find out what agents they are, and then you can look at their catalog, and then you can try to query them. However, just keep in mind, again, they get a lot of requests.
Yes, yeah.
So
another good way to meet agents is to, I guess digitally now, but go to writers' conferences or events where they're going to be, meeting them in person, you're making that connection, that sort of thing. You can also...
Always trust your gut, too, when you meet an agent.
Mm-hmm.
There's the age-old adage of... Oh, an agent, they're like, I'm 1 in a million with them. They're not treating me very well. No, if they genuinely want you, you'll know. So trust your gut when it comes to an agent. If that agent, you talk to them and you're like, I don't know if they really care about me or whatever, then they don't. They probably don't. So just always be real careful.
You're going to have a working relationship with them, so you want that to be good.
Exactly, yeah. And you don't want to just be like, the agent says, I have like 1 million names on my list. It's like, well, then why are you not selling anything?
Another thing I could mention is Twitter. I think it's twice a year, might be more frequently than that. They do, I think it's called PitMad. So it's hashtag PitMad. And what it is it's like a pitch event. So you go on there and you condense your elevator pitch down to Twitter's maximum character limit, plus like hashtag your genre or whatever. And you put that out there on your Twitter page and encourage your friends and followers to share it around. And that hashtag, the agents and publishers, I've even gone in there, will go in there and look at all the pitches that grab their attention, and they will hit the like button on it. And if you get a like, that means you can submit to us. So it's the quickest and easiest way to get an invitation to submit to somebody you wouldn't otherwise have the chance to.
Yeah. And always remember, too, is publishing companies, small presses, agents, they don't make money unless they have things to sell people, which are books that you have written. So make sure that your book is, available and ready for when those events happen. So if you have an idea for a concept, I absolutely do it, right? Yeah. But make sure that whenever, like for example, in your submission guidelines, it says that you have to have your manuscript complete, right? So make sure you have your manuscript complete before you start going into
Fiction is very different from nonfiction. If you're writing a fiction book and you're submitting it, it has to be complete. Nonfiction, they expect a proposal. And a proposal is just, I am an expert on this topic. I want to write this book. Here's my outline. Do you want me to write it? Will you pay me to write it? That's very different from fiction, where we want a finished product, or as finished as you can make it, that we can take from that point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so next question is, what do you think are the current trends in fantasy? In other words, what kinds of fantasy are most popular right now?
So the biggest thing that's happening in fantasy right now is most agents and publishers are looking for things that kind of break the mold of traditional fantasy. We're not looking for medieval, and we're not looking for steampunk. We're not looking for things that have been done. So they want very original worlds, and they want original storylines, and they want original romances, if there is a romance or friendship or whatever in the story. So LGBT is huge. Just things that are not seen before as much. Representation.
Yeah.
Because of Black Lives Matter, you're seeing a lot of calls for writers of color to write more about their culture and their experiences, and to put that in fantasy worlds, because that is something different, something we haven't seen.
Absolutely. And it's a fantasy world. You can do what you want.
Yeah, so you could take inspiration from any different culture, or even just from your own imagination, and that is going to be more likely to get noticed than something that's just done, it's another castle and another princess and another sort of thing.
Yeah. Now, those stories, that being said, can hold up.
Yes, but you have to you have to break the tropes with it. You have to flip things on their head, do something unexpected, and then market that as, this is why my book is different.
Mm-hmm. And don't worry, one day, eventually, the quote-unquote generic fantasy, it'll flip back, and then it'll flip again. And it's just kind of the way the market works. You'll notice it if you just pay attention to the... what is popular. If
you actually go and research agents in your genre and see what things they are looking for, it'll tell you what the up-and-coming market is going to look like.
Yes. Yeah.
So they'll be like, I'm currently looking for more LGBT voices, and you'll know that's what they're looking for. What's coming up in the new and upcoming books.
Yeah. Now, this is a piece of advice just from me, from film. Chasing a trend doesn't work.
No, because by the time your book gets launched in a year or so, that will no longer necessarily be the trend.
Exactly. So write what you want to write. Yeah. Don't write because it's going to be popular. Like, no one foresaw how quickly vampires went whoosh, and then like, no one saw that coming, how fast they rose and then just crashed.
Write to make something interesting, and that's going to be more lasting.
Right, exactly.
It's a unique idea, or something that's got a level of interest.
And something that interests you.
Yeah.
Because if it's not interesting to you and you're just writing it to bring it to market, then there's not going to be any investment in that. So write for you.
To a point.
Well, yeah, you have to make sure
it's a mix. It's a balance. Yeah. But you do have to be motivated. I think that's important. Yeah. That'll get you through. Because you're writing like 70 to 100,000 words.
Yes.
You need to have that motivation to see you through that process and to see you through rewrites and all that. Yeah.
So this question is, what is the market like right now for short story fantasy works? Either single stories or bound collections?
So we don't really deal in those very much. This is our first foray into them doing the anthology. So all I can say to that is kind of, we'll see. So our anthology, which is called Far, Far Away, is going to be 7 stories in 7 different realms of fantasy and science fiction. That's kind of the tagline. So that's going to be coming out next summer. So we'll see how that does. I honestly don't know yet and can't really answer that question. I know me personally, I'm trying my hand now at writing more short stories and submitting to different anthologies and markets. So I'm still testing that market.
Yeah. So when we find out, we'll let you know.
Yeah. It's a question for next year.
Next year's one. Yeah. So next question is there as much interest in standalone novels as a series?
Yes, I would say both. Both are equally valid and wanted in the market. Mm-hmm. I think standalones are maybe being looked at more frequently right now, specifically, but I appreciate a good series. I know readers who really like to read kind of appreciate more long form, the things they can go back to. Yeah. But maybe the other ones are just kind of easy to try something out. So both. Yeah. There's pros and cons on both sides.
I would agree with you on that fact, is both of them have
especially
their
in fantasy
merits. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's series for fantasy that have been going on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, we just talked about Game of Thrones earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That's popular because it is such a long series. Outlander is another one that's big and has managed to do so well because it goes on and on and on, and you stay with those people. But there are things that are standalones that are, perfect from start to finish and don't need anything else.
Yeah, they don't need
a window into a world kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. I think that they both are just as valid.
Yeah.
So next question is, do you have any tips for fantasy writers who are trying to break into the market right now? I have a tip.
Okay.
Keep writing. Don't stop.
Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, just with the try to make your story very unique.
Yes.
And try to make sure that you understand. Don't think about this while you're writing it, and don't think of it while you're trying to come up with well, you can while you're trying to come up with the idea. But when you're done writing it and you're trying to come up with that query letter, you're trying to think about your story in like a whole term, try to think what makes this different, interesting, what is the hook, what's the thing that people are going to talk about this book. I think understanding that before you try to start to break into the market is really going to help you pitch it and help you know where to, how to market that book.
Why would someone be invested in the world that you have created?
Yeah.
What kind of thing makes them want to turn the page? What sticks in their mind after they close the book and walk down the street? Like,
a good exercise
what are they going to remember?
Is try to write that elevator pitch and start with I do this. I'll start with a paragraph and then I'll crunch it down to like a couple of sentences, and I'll crunch it down to try to get it down to like one sentence. What is my book about?
Yeah.
And if that sentence doesn't make you go like, oh, that's cool, then you either didn't hit the heart of your book, or maybe your book doesn't have that hook that you need to break in. So that you need that to be able to make it into the market at all.
Apologies, my cat is meowing right now. All right, so the next question is, are there any story, character, settings, or magic system trends going on in fantasy right now that you are tired of seeing? May I go first?
Take it away, sir.
Okay. Loose magic systems. I have a real problem with the loose magic system. There's a difference between loose magic and hard magic. I'm not going to get into the whole thing right now.
Soft magic.
Soft magic.
It's where your magic system isn't clearly defined.
Exactly.
It doesn't really
I can just
rules.
do it because I can.
Yeah.
There's no rules. There's no. I have to sacrifice X to do this, or I can only do this when I have my staff, or I can only cast this many of this spell, or I need to crush bugs to do this. Like, that's hard. They have a thing, and it works a certain way, and that's the way it is. Whereas loose magic is,
I cast a spell.
it's like, oh, we need to get through this door. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could... Oh, look, you're melting the stone. Okay, I didn't know you could do that, because it's never been shown in 5 books that you can do that.
It comes off as a bit lazy as far as writing goes. It can work if magic is not the focus.
Lord of the Rings is a great example of a loose magic system that functions.
Yeah.
Gandalf is the epitome of loose magic. He can do whatever he wants. It doesn't matter. But in the context of that world, the way they've developed that world, they indicated that not only is it loose magic, but he does have a certain kind of presence about him, and it's based on him, and he can do it a certain way. Like, it's a good example of it. But there are so many bad examples, and it seems like, to me anyway, if it's done accurately and it's character driven, it's okay. If it's just, oh my god, I wrote myself into a corner, I got to get out of here.
Don't use that to solve
terrible.
The plot. Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I'm a stickler for hard magic systems. If it is this way, that is the way it is, and if there is an alteration to that, it's special. And there's a reason why it's different. Yeah. But that's me.
So, right off the bat, we talked about earlier, vampires. Vampires are dead. Pardon the pun. So there is still a market for paranormal romance, where they do the vampire, the shifter thing, the werewolf thing.
Change a vampire.
All that stuff. But in fantasy, don't do it. It's not selling right now, honestly. We have a fantastic vampire-themed comedic book, which kind of makes fun of the whole vampire tropes, and just because it is about vampires, even loosely connected to them, it will not sell.
People will walk by the table, they'll look at it over, and they'll see the cover and be like, oh, what's this? They'll pick it up because it has the big red... Actually, it's right there. It's got a big cover, a big red word on the front that says, sucks. And so they'll be like, ooh, and then they'll read the rest of it. And then they'll see the stake on the cover, and they'll go, what's this about? And it's like, oh, it's a comic take on a high school kids fighting a bunch of vampires. And they're like, oh, okay.
The book is hilarious and so worth reading, but because it has vampires in it, I cannot sell it to anybody. So
but everybody picks it up.
That's the biggest trope.
Everybody picks it up.
Yeah, that's the biggest trope. And in addition to that, I think in YA, the trope of she's the chosen one, and she has 2 hot guys who like her, and she can't choose between them, but she's got all the magic
combat.
She's got all the magic powers
until it matters, and then I'm really good at it.
There is nothing more frustrating anymore than that. So, like your Hunger Games knockoffs, that sort of thing, Twilight, Hunger Games, any of the big things where they just do a knockoff of it. that's not working.
Yeah, if you're going to do a good knockoff, you have to actually be good at it. Because there are some excellent knockoffs.
Some of them
out there.
read like bland copies, and you really want to avoid that, unfortunately. Another big one right now that I've been super irritated by is the princess contest story. So you probably don't read young adult fiction.
Not often, no.
So, for example, there's a contest to become the next heir to the throne, and the girls have to either like compete in a bloody battle together, or they have to like prove that they're the best princess or something.
So now
like
I want
that.
to read that.
There's
like Battle Royale with princesses. I'm
down.
down.
I could give you a specific title, but I could give you like 5 of them that have the exact same plot line. So it's anything that's
all
tired.
Identical.
Yeah, anything that's tired that you've seen multiple times. If you can do a quick Google search of your concept and you see like 20 of them,
yeah. For example,
probably a trope.
When I said vampires don't do regular vampires, I didn't mean don't write a vampire in your book. If your book needs a vampire, write a vampire. But
it has to be a very unique twist that'll be marketable to people. And
like instead of drinking blood, your vampire feeds off the pheromones of other people, so he has to try to get them into a certain emotional state so that he can draw off their pheromones to gain his energy to then be able to convince them to do X, Y, and Z. Or I don't know.
It's right about psychic vampires.
Yeah, make it unique.
But yes, the word vampires right now is a turn off in the market.
Yeah, so it's and eventually things will shift. A while ago, it was zombies was just trash fire. Like nobody will buy it. Anything to do with zombies.
When World War Z came out.
Yeah, it was just like people were like, I'm tired of the undead and zombies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just you got to keep an eye on the markets because I think the one that's just up and coming right now is shifting into more temporal stuff. Time jumpy stuff is just
time travel.
It's just starting.
I've also seen a lot
now.
of like a fantasy variation on like AI. So not just AI, but like constructed beings.
God, you remember dragons? Do you remember dragons in fantasy books?
But no, a big question right now is like, what is humanity? What does it mean to be human? So variations on that theme, I've seen a lot of.
Yeah, man, it's a really good dragon book. Last one I think was the most popular present one was Game of Thrones, but there's tons of good dragon books out there.
That's true.
Next question. What are the benefits of publishing with a small Canadian press compared to self-publishing and larger book publishers? Do you notice any specific differences in the context you publish in comparison? We kind of answered it in the first half, but we'll reiterate it here. It's
just basically the smaller presses can take bigger risks.
Yes.
And that's because...
Which is weird.
You wouldn't think that to be the way it was. Weird. But we're our audience expects us to be more creative, and they expect to find odd, unique things in a small press. So for that, we can take things that are a little more fringe or try experimental stuff. We can take risks. Mm-hmm. We also, you have, again, we mentioned the personal relationship. I think that's really important. Yep. Being smaller, we don't have, as much to occupy our attention. Friendlier, I would think. I'd like to think.
General. It depends on who your contact is at the publishing company.
Yeah, of course. But we have the ability to do that. It's more personable, like I said.
A lot of people also comment that with publishing companies, it is if you're going great, everything's wonderful. If you're doing what they want, it's wonderful. If they're doing what you want, it's wonderful. But if something comes up where you're conflicted, it's just poison.
Yeah, for sure. That's with anything. So as for Canadian,
you have much less control with a big company over your own property.
That's true. As for being Canadian, if the author happens to be Canadian as well, you have that ability to do more shows locally. Maybe we can arrange book signings for you because it's we're able to do shows in your area maybe or travel to you depending on how far you are.
Canada's a little big.
Canada's kind of big, yeah.
It's kind of
but
big.
If you're in Ontario,
it's kind of big. Ontario's kind of big.
No, but even still, we do travel as far as kind of like Sarnia. We're going to do Ottawa. Where our plan was to do Ottawa this year. That didn't really happen.
That's like a third.
Yeah,
it's like a third of the province.
But it's something. We're at the far corner, okay?
All tucked away down there.
Unfortunately, the downside of being Canadian genre press in this day and age is that the Canadian Arts Council and the Ontario Arts Council do not really support genre fiction, and I think that's a tragedy. Canada, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but they don't really support fantasy and genre. They're more interested in literary books or poetry history or local stuff about Canada itself.
Yeah, like an area or something.
That's just what our government funds, and they don't really fund us. They kind of see genre stuff as being too commercial, I think.
Yeah, they would much prefer we focused more on
local Canadian
Canada
stuff.
itself.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
how great we are. Aren't we great? Aren't we great there? We're doing so good. We're so great.
What that leads to is we're unable to get grants.
Yeah.
So we don't have the backing of the cultural programs. We don't have that level of funding, and I think that's unfortunate. And I hope that does change one day. So that is a downside.
However, it also means that when you are writing that kind of thing as a Canadian, you will know that technically speaking, a lot of the big companies out there, they're not Canadian.
No.
So if you're writing fantasy and you're wanting to try to get into the big companies and stuff, it's not as big of a concern if you're not writing what they're not wanting.
There are also very few genre publishers, comparatively. Shouldn't say there aren't very few, but comparatively very few genre publishers in Canada, like small presses, because it's hard. You don't have that backing, so it is difficult. There are a couple, and even just in the past couple of years, I've seen a couple of those close their doors. So, it's unfortunate. Yeah,
and there is always...
But if you're in that niche and you want a partner in Canada, then, we're an option.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when it comes to fantasy as fantasy itself, there is not a single person out there that doesn't know what the fantasy genre is. Like, whether or not they like it or not is a whole different story, but everybody knows what it is.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's become very mainstream in the last... Yeah.
Absolutely. Are there any motifs or representation you want to see more of in fantasy? Yeah. I have an answer. Let's hear yours.
Okay. I would like to see more LGBT stuff. We do get asked for that at shows that we go to, specifically, and also I'm just really interested in that. Like, I do enjoy reading those kind of stories. It's just so it's not all the same. You have different combinations, different possibilities. It doesn't have to be the main.
Just don't force it.
Yeah, but that doesn't have to be the main relationship in the story either. It's just like make your world more representative of what the possibilities are. So it's just a little more open, and I just think that's interesting. Specifically. Also, I want to see more imaginative settings. So settings that haven't been done before, things that aren't as obviously based on a culture that we have right now in the real world. I want you to really create something different, new, that has different rules for the way that it works. And whether that's the magic system, whether that's the culture, whether that's geography. Brandon Sanderson has a book where, like, the sky is red and ash falls instead of rain. Like, I want to see something different.
Something new. Not the same old, there's a castle with a whole bunch of peasants.
Yeah, and you can have a castle. I don't care. I like castles, but I just want to see different things added into it. And I also like when you throw a trope on its head or reverse the script. So you see something where you expect it to go one way and then it doesn't. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mine is a little more specific, is I would really like to see more monsters.
Okay.
When was the last fantasy book that you read that had an actual monster in it? That wasn't just people with people.
Oh, I see your point, yeah.
Like, give me an ogre. Give me a troll.
Yeah, instead of people fighting each other or people versus environment.
Yeah, give me a monster that you've made yourself. Yeah. Totally unique, and it can become its own thing. Like, again, when was the last time you heard dragons in a book? Like, give me a monster.
That's true.
Because it's been so long, it would be refreshing to see one. You know what I mean?
I see your point, yeah.
Everything else you said is great. Like, I have no problem with that at all. But it's just, give me a monster. Cool. Maybe a troll that wears a bridge, and anytime he goes near a ditch, he just lowers into it and puts it down. I don't know. Give me something new.
Also, though, if your monster is completely made on your own, it isn't just an ogre or an orc or a troll.
Make it up. Describe it. How it works.
Yeah. We get those every once in a while where it's sword and sorcery, and it has elves. It has this. It's basically another kind of Tolkien thing. And unfortunately, that's not something that we can market.
Yeah.
It's been done.
Yeah. And it's not... We're not knocking on things that have been done or things from the past.
It's not what the market is asking for.
They are great, but the market's not there. Like, I have no problem reading the classic, the knight on horseback going to the castle to kill the dragon to save the damsel. I do not mind that at all. No. And I don't even mind it reversed. Like that, I love Tangled.
Being fans of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
We both like a good sword and sorcery.
Yeah,
but
there's nothing wrong with that at all. And there's nothing wrong with the tropes, in my opinion. It's just right now it's not
Yeah.
something that they're
And we
looking at.
talked about that the market
books.
is so saturated. I think that's a reason why you can't do something that's been tired, because everybody has seen so much of that right now.
Yeah.
There's too many of the same types of books.
Yeah, and I'm sure I could sit here and probably list dozens of them, but we don't have the time.
No.
So we're going to go to the next one. So, what services does a publisher provide to authors to help them reach their readers?
So I'm assuming that question is asking specifically about marketing.
I think so.
Yeah. So other than the preparation of the book itself and trying to make it as marketable as possible, so that's like the back matter and coming up with the ads and that sort of thing.
Cover.
Yeah. Our publishing house specifically, as we said, splits the marketing job into and tries to divide it with the author. So what we expect the author to do is to attend as many events as possible, to arrange their own book signings, to try to sell their books in person and online and in stores, and be active on social media, blah, 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 blah. We do all that stuff too.
Yes.
And in addition to that, we have our online store where we try to market all of the books at once. We attend as many shows as possible. We also will create digital advertisements and ads and banners and all that fun stuff, art for the author and for ourselves to use. And we'll also create them, if they want to do shows and they want to go to markets, we'll create a banner, we'll create business cards, we'll create bookmarks. We'll do all of those things so that they can have the best possible chance of marketing that book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we just did one 2 weeks ago for it's right on the top there. Libby and the...
Yeah.
Oh, I always say it wrong. Libby and the...
So Libby the Lobivia Jajoyana is a children's book that's just come out in October. And this is actually a really kind of... Marketing is a good story to tell about this one, because this book had 4 of us working on it. So there's 2 authors, the artist, and then the publishing company, which I'm counting as one person, even though it's a team. But so we were all responsible for putting the book together. So everybody had their part. And then for the launch of the book, we did a cover reveal.
Yep.
So there's a big event online this year.
It had like a quiz.
It had games. It had giveaways. It had, that sort of thing. It was all online. It had interviews with the authors. Then we did a launch party with similar sorts of things, but it went more in depth. We had some guests come out.
Yeah, you did a reading with the lady that they're going to be doing with the audiobook of this eventually.
Yeah, so a voice actress came and did part of the live reading. The author herself has done some online interviews with various guest speakers of various topics that have to do with her book. So like the cactus, there's some people from the gardening Toronto Gardeners Association, that sort of thing.
Shout out to them because they're pretty cool.
Yes.
Now
the artist is now working on doing T-shirts and merchandise, and we've even got a pair of flip-flops coming. So like, just
they're building their platform.
They're building a platform, and they're trying to find unique ways to make Libby just stay in the public eye. And that's a good example of how you could do things differently now that the world has kind of changed for us.
It's all going to be focused more on the digital age and product. So it's going to be focusing more on that attitude.
So even though we don't have an ebook for this one, it's just a physical book because it's a kid's book, we're still able to market it online. I think that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's smaller than a lot of the other books as a kid book, so shipping for that would be...
Shipping is really cheap.
Easy.
Yep.
So yeah.
Hope that answers that question. We're kind of all over the place there.
Next question is, what do you look for when reading a manuscript from a new author?
So we kind of glossed over this a little bit, but genre, so something that fits within our wheelhouse. Most importantly for me, I am looking first and foremost for a really engaging opening. So when I open a submission, I do read the query letter first. Some of our readers are /pal
Do it
readers.
the other way.
Do it the other way. But essentially, once I've kind of logged the submission, the first thing I open is that sample chapters. And I'm going to see if the writing stands on its own. So I'm going to read that first sentence. Does it intrigue me? I'm going to read that first paragraph. And does it follow through? I'm going to read that first scene. Am I interested? So that's my first judgment call right there. Then once I've done that, if I am interested in it, I want to kind of go back and look at the synopsis to kind of see where the story is going to go and read the query letter a little more carefully. If all that pans out, then I will read the rest of the sample. If at the end of that sample, I'm like, oh, I want to read more of this, that's when I will request a full manuscript. Yeah. And each of our submissions is not just read by one person. It's always at least 2, sometimes more than that. It's a team of 4 now. So at least 2 people will look at each manuscript. Those notes that they leave on the manuscript will get kind of compiled together, and that's how you get your feedback.
Excellent. Next question is, what are some effective ways for a debut author to promote their work and to get it out into the literary world?
So I think we've mostly covered that question pretty extensively now.
Make a platform. Like, for example, we have
in this age, that's your first thing that you have to kind of do.
I'll use Sharon for example.
Yeah,
Sharon has been doing a web series that she's been doing right now, talking about her author life. Yeah. So it's got like behind the scenes stuff about when she's writing. She'll post things on there about like different things that she's seen and everything. And she's doing that to build engagement with her audience while she's writing one of her other books. Yeah. So it's a way to keep them engaged. She'll
just pop onto either Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and just be like, this is what I'm doing in my author life right now. And it'll just be a picture and a little blurb of, I'm currently doing edits, and she's holding up a page with editing. Or today I'm out walking with my dog or whatever. Like, she'll come up with just, this is a snapshot into my author life. So that's a neat way of kind of just keeping engagement up. Another thing, Reagan McCauley, the author of Libby, does is she has a newsletter. So her big thing is her newsletter. So she'll do interviews on there. She'll talk about other authors. She'll, advise people what she's got going on. So, and she does a lot of video stuff too. So you just pick what social media platform works for you that you're more comfortable in. Maybe you like talking to a camera, maybe you don't. So maybe, Twitter's nice and easy for you because you can do it on your phone, or, you like snapping pictures, so Instagram. So you don't need to be on all the social media platforms, but you should be on at least maybe 2 or 3 or a couple.
Just pick a couple that you know well. And
that you're willing to put in the time and effort to do, because it's a commitment.
Yeah, and you got to start making a platform.
A blog is another good one if you rather write articles.
Yep.
You can also search out other people's platforms, creators that have maybe slightly more of a platform than you do, or other authors, and or even other people who are just like, for example, the cactus, the gardening people. So search out other people who have a platform and ask, can I write a guest post for yours? Yep. Can you interview me? Or invite other authors to come onto your platform, and that's how you cross promote.
Yeah. I always found that for me personally, it's always one of those... you always have to provide value to another person first before you can expect them to provide value back to you. So I would always say, hey, I'm doing a promotion about this, and I've noticed you in the space. Would you like to do a post on my thing? And then usually a person would go, oh, okay. And they'll do it. But now you've formed a relationship.
Yeah, so then you can connect with local authors in your area. Exactly. You can cross-promote with them as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like this person wrote a book, but so did this person. So the two of you will go on each other's platforms and do something. Or do like a series where I'm going to interview 5 local authors this month or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
That's where some of these shows started.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
Yeah.
All right, so next question is it important for a debut author to have a literary agent representing them? Or can a first-time author make do without an agent?
So I would say you can make do without an agent in pretty much every case, except for if you're trying to chase after a medium to large publisher. Yeah. Then you're better off having an agent representing you, because a lot of the larger presses will not accept what they call unsolicited manuscripts. Yep. So in that case, you need an agent who has those connections to do it for you. But if you are not having luck trying to get an agent, or if you're not interested in kind of having an agent work on your behalf, or maybe you've had a bad experience with them, or you don't want to share the profits of your book because you know that you're a first-time author and you're maybe not going to make that much. Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons why agents wouldn't be for you, and you can definitely make do without them. And a good there's two ways you can go about it, 2 different approaches. One is you start by trying to get an agent and go for the big 5. That doesn't work. You scale back and try medium press. That doesn't work. You scale back to smaller press, that sort of thing. Or you go the other way around, and your first book, you try to go with a small press. And if that does well, you can build a little bit of a following and build some credibility in the market. The next time you go for a slightly bigger press, bigger fish kind of thing. So you have options, and you don't have to stick with whatever the first one is that you choose. A lot of published authors who have done really well in traditional markets eventually think, oh, well, I have a platform of my own now, I'm going to self-publish.
Yep, and that happens.
Yeah, so they're like hybrids now. Like they'll do some that are published through big houses, and some they publish themselves to their own fans, or the other way around. So
yeah,
like E.L. James was a fanfic author who published on like fanfic platforms, and then published with a small press, and then got picked up by a big press. So it does happen the other way around as well.
Yeah, it's just, well, he used that to build his platform.
It's a she, but yeah,
he. Sorry,
it's okay. It doesn't matter.
They used it to build their platform. So. All right, so the next one. Actually, it's our last one. We're on our last question. So it says, what are some tips to help a debut fantasy novel stand out from the many others that are out there?
Yeah, so we've covered this topic extensively too, but it's basically just about having something unique that you can use to market it, and just to be able to get people interested in it. So something that they can glance at or see a one-sentence description of and want to read. The other trick, another way of doing it is to really hone in and find your niche. So if you're writing paranormal shifter romance, find your fans that also like to read paranormal fiction romance. So there's some genres and some markets that are very specific. So some people only like to read Regency romances, and they'll just read a whole pile of them and they'll go through them. And if that's what you write and you can churn those out at a reasonable rate,
you have a client.
That's your fan base. So you want to find where those people live, whether it's on social media, Facebook, or like forums, or in person somewhere, or whatever. You want to find those people and you want to market directly to them. Some stuff's a bit more broad, so it really also depends on your book.
Yeah, I would say pretty much the same thing. Yeah. It's just find where your fans are and be there.
Or find who you can offer value to.
Yes.
So, for example, if it's like we talked about the kids book with the cactus, so maybe this belongs in like gardening centers in an area where kids might go, like that kind of thing. So, you can find alternate ways to market.
Yeah, you got to find where they are and kind of go from there. So those are the questions that we have that you guys have sent in. If you have any other questions, by all means, send them over. We'll see if we can maybe make another FAQ video.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll post it.
You can always go to mirrorworldpublishing.com and take a look at our submission guidelines. We already mentioned they're very clearly written out for you. We also have a contact form on our website. We have a Facebook group. We're on all of the social media platforms. I'm sure you're not surprised by that after listening to this. And we have a ton of other videos on similar topics on YouTube. So if you do want more information, want to dive in deeper, you can do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much to your professor. Thank you very much, Michael Fox. And we are going to leave that here. I think will be where we're going to end it.
Well, thank you, Adam, for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. Now, if you would be so kind as to pass me This Night Sucks, I'm going to read it again.
All right, well, in that case, I'm going to pick up the Time Travelers Resort Museum.
There you go.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. And from all of us here, because there's other people part of Mirror World Publishing, they have your editor. Yes. You have the 2 readers for your submission piles now as well. So from all of us here, you have yourself a wonderful day, and make sure you get your assignments in on time. Bye.